going to dive into Ben Shapiro. So Ben Shapiro uttered verbal diarrhea the other day when he decided to go out there and seriously say with a straight face that empathy is bad for politics. We're not even going to get into debunking it. Just go ahead and watch the clip and then we'll discuss.
There's only one problem, okay? Empathy is actually kind of bad for politics. The reason that empathy is bad for politics is because it leads you to empathize with people that you are more likely to like as opposed to people you don't like. Okay, so first of all, the pitch for empathy is actually, there have been several books that are written on this, social science books, talking about how empathy is not actually the best thing for politics. It actually almost deactivates the reasoning centers of your brain. Because when you're empathetic, you don't actually create good policy. This doesn't mean that feeling sympathy for people is a bad thing. It means that if empathy is what drives your policy making, you're probably not acting in a rational fashion. But the real goal here is, of course, not to generate empathy. The real goal here is to suggest that if you disagree with the idea that America is systemically and institutionally racist, you are not an empathetic person, and therefore you're a bad, cruel, and callous person. Right? The idea is that empathy is really about, it's really a moral statement about what kind of good person you are. And you can't watch baseball until you say it along with Morgan Freeman. You can't. You can't just watch a game and be distracted, which is the goal of sport.
What? Dude, sometimes I wonder when I'm watching these types of clips from these right-wing buffoons, whether it's Ben Shapiro, whether it's, I can include Jordan Peterson in that category, whether it's Steven Crowder, whether it's any of these right-wing politicians, it genuinely crosses my mind that maybe they don't even believe what they're saying. Because how could you? You know what you just said was BS. That empathy leads you to only like-minded people. Just dropped the water bottle. That empathy only leads you to like-minded people. That's not the premise of empathy. The premise of empathy is the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes who may not come from the same vision as you, come from the same background as you, come from where you came from, but your ability to look at someone who may not come from where you came from and say, hey, I empathize with you. I see your struggle. I see what you're going through. And maybe we can find some type of common ground. That's the whole point of empathy. I don't understand. And then the idea that it's bad for politics, that it takes away your reasoning. No. Empathy allows you to look at the working class and the working poor and the struggling factions of this country, regardless if they are black, white, brown, regardless if they're Muslim, Jewish, Christian, regardless if they're straight or gay, woman or man, whatever. And you're able to say with empathy that maybe they deserve a living wage, that maybe they deserve a Green New Deal and a jobs program, an investment, tuition-free college, Medicare for all, an agenda that gives them equal opportunity, that gives them a chance at success in this country. That's what empathy provides you. That's what we're working on here on the progressive side, empathy. And sometimes it may go too far, right? Sometimes with some of the rhetoric, it creates, right, sectionalism. Right? It creates this type of tribalism. Sometimes that's where empathy drives you because you are so focused on creating liberation for those oppressed groups. I understand that part of it. But the reality remains that empathy also drives you to see that we need collective liberation. Empathy is the one thing that makes a good politician, a politician that fights for the people. That is why you're a heartless asshole. That is why you don't support a Green New Deal. That's why you don't support Medicare for all. That's why you don't support an agenda that works for all of our people. Because you don't have empathy. Because you're working with logic and reasoning. Because you cannot for 1 second put yourself in the shoes of a single mother struggling to feed her family. Put yourselves in the shoes of someone who has never received a chance in their life, never got a fair shake by this system, and is forced to enter a life of crime, and is forced to do things that they have to do, basic things, terrible things that they need to do to survive. You can't put yourself in the shoes of people like me or people like my family who are living in communities, oppressed communities, struggling every day to get a fair shake in this system. You can't for 1 second put yourself out of your elite bubble and put yourselves in opposition. That's why you're an asshole. That's what's wrong with your politics. And most importantly, that's why you're going to lose. That's why you're going to lose because you don't have empathy, Ben. You don't have empathy. You're an asshole. You're stuck in your bubble with your head up your ass and you can't see the struggle. You can't see the pain. You can't see that in the middle of a pandemic, we gave trillions in a bailout to the corporations, and that's a problem because they gave us crumbs, because they gave the small businesses crumbs, because they are allowing the moratorium on eviction to expire today. And they're sitting on their ass, twiddling their thumbs, jerking off in their basement, and not doing the basic reforms that are necessary to save lives, to save finances, to save families from economic destruction and slaughter at the hands of this virus. That is why. That is what's wrong with politics. Lack of empathy, not empathy. And what's beautiful about it is that most people aren't like that. Most people aren't assholes. Most people have empathy. We're human beings. We're human beings. We're sentient beings. We have the ability to look at someone's struggle, most of us at least, and say, hey, maybe I can for 1 second put myself in that position. Maybe I can for 1 second see and imagine what it's like to not be able to feed your family, what it's like to live in generational poverty, what it's like to live in a ghetto, what it's like to struggle, what it's like to not know where your next meal is going to come from, and the desperation that comes from that. What might drive you to go out and kill someone? What might drive you to go out and rob someone? What might drive you to go out and join a gang and sell drugs and do things that they demonize and go out and burn a precinct when someone of your skin color is squashed by the knee of a cop? Over and over and over again, we are oppressed at the hands of this system. Over and over and over again, we are oppressed at the hands of the system. And empathy allows you to see. Empathy allows you to see the need for true progressive change. That's what you're lacking, Ben, and that's a problem. It's a serious problem. That's why you're an asshole, and that's why you're a dying breed. But the silver lining, as I said, is that most people aren't running from that. Most people are not operating from that perspective. Most people aren't operating from this lack of empathy. We need to prioritize reasoning, logic, and the war of ideas. Most people aren't operating from that. Most people can look at George Floyd's life being squeezed out from under him and say, maybe that's a systemic problem. Most people can look at people struggling to survive and entering a life of crime because they need to feed their family and say, hey, maybe they need investment. Maybe they need a Green New Deal. Maybe they need Medicare for all. That's why we're going to win, Ben. That's why progressives are going to win out in the war of ideas and you aren't, because most people are not like you. Most people aren't emotionless assholes who are stuck in their elite bubble and can't for 1 second see out of it with their head up their ass. Most people aren't like that, Ben. Most people are everyday schmucks. Most people are struggling to feed their family and pay the rent. Most people are living paycheck to paycheck in this country. And at the end of the day, we're going to win out because we're going to strike a chord with that common empathy. We're going to strike a chord with that common struggle, and we're going to bring all of them together. We're going to bring the blacks together. We're going to bring the whites together. We're going to bring the labor movement together, the climate movement together. We're going to bring the black rights organization together, the immigrant rights organization together. We're going to bring all of them together behind an agenda that works for our collective liberation. And you're going to be sitting on the sidelines wishing that you were on the right side of history and not on the wrong. So fuck you. Fuck you, Ben Shapiro. You're an emotionless asshole and you're a political dinosaur. You may be young, but that ideology that you're preaching, it's aging. It's dying. What's going to win out is empathy. What's going to win out is a heart. What's going to win out is collective liberation. I believe that to the core. All right, man. I said my spiel. I said my spiel. I hate stuff like that, man. I hate people who can't see out of their elite bubble. That's what's wrong with politics. That's what's so wrong with politics. They can't see out of that bubble. People like Ben Shapiro can't see out of that bubble. People like Donald Trump, people like Ted Cruz, even many of these establishment Democrats, they can't see out of that elite bubble. They don't see the struggle. They don't see what we're going through. They don't see the fact that 30 million people today are about to lose the essential lifeline necessary to feed their family. That today, the moratorium on evictions is expiring. Today, bro. Today, the moratorium on evictions is expiring, and Congress is twiddling their thumbs. People ain't going to take it, bro. People aren't going to take it anymore. They're not taking it anymore. That's why they're taking to the streets. That's why the Wide Awake protests sponsored by Sunrise are gaining such traction. That's why we had a strike for Black Lives on Monday, where tens of thousands of workers across the country marched out of their job. Fast food workers, frontline healthcare workers, transportation workers, Amazon warehouse workers, they marched out of their job because they are struggling and working for starvation wages and cannot feed their family. That's why. They're not going to take it anymore. That's what's wrong with politics. Lack of empathy, lack of understanding, stuck with your head up your ass, not seeing our everyday struggle. And what's going to save us, Ben, What's going to save us, you emotionless asshole, is empathy. What's going to save us, Ben, is progressive change. When we strike a nerve, when we strike that common empathy nerve where you can see that we are all going through the same struggle, the blacks, the whites, the working class, the Latinos, the Native Americans, the Asians, the gays, the straights, women, men, anything in between, we're all struggling to survive. Empathy is what's going to bring us together to topple this system. Empathy is what's going to save America. I believe it. I believe it. You're a dinosaur and you're dying. And fuck you. A nice little, I like that.